Welcome to the Reimagine podcast. Each week, give yourself 30 minutes and meet the people working hard to create the future of insurance today.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine podcast. Laura, how are you?
I am doing well, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, super timely topic, regenerative AI, and all things insurance and machine and people related. I think this is going to be a really good topic. So do you want to introduce our speakers and we'll dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a familiar face or familiar voice if you're listening in today. We have Neeraja Rasmussen, the founder of Spyglaz, which is an AI growth platform that can help increase distribution and customer value. So it's fascinating. She's been a part of our family for years now, since 2019, and we're excited to have her on to talk more about the work that they're doing at Spyglaz and diving into this AI conversation. And with us also today, we have Prem Kumar, who's currently the CEO and co-founder of Humanly. And this is absolutely fascinating. I can't wait for you all to hear more about it. It's a generative AI platform that empowers hiring teams to be more effective and equitable in the job candidate conversations. So it's a nice mix today of humans, technology, and where we're going to go next.
Yeah, and Neeraja, maybe just start with you. Maybe I'll set this up. I'd like people to hear a little bit more about what you're doing to give context about the industry. We just had an event. A RetireTech 2.0 conference. We will be packaging up some of those discussions and putting them out in podcasts over the next few months. But our industry is really in transition on a number of different fronts. We have to be more effective. We have to be more efficient in how we reach our customers, how we sell our products, how we interact and attract and retain our agents. And then, Prem, on the human side, we've had massive turnover in the insurance industry over the last, 3 years, not unlike everybody else. And most companies are looking to say, listen, how do I not only recruit and retain the best people, but how do I address, DE&I issues? And I think you're both right in that topic. But let's sort of go to you. Why don't you talk about what exactly you've done, what you're doing with us, and where's the future going to take us here in this industry?
Absolutely. No, I'd be happy to talk about that. So I'll start with high level, the insurance industry. And when you think about an industry that is as regulated and has the kind of product and process complexity that insurance has, the use cases, there's massive potential for using AI, generative AI, and new technologies to drive those efficiencies. And there's potential to drive efficiencies across the entire value chain, from underwriting to claims to servicing to distribution. And the space that we're more focused on is the servicing and the distribution sales part of the process. And specifically, the work that we're doing, if I can talk about that, the work that we're doing with Nassau is very interesting to me for obvious reasons, because we're leveraging machine learning and AI to enable better sales relationships or optimize the relationships that a carrier might have with agents. And we can do this through predictive models, like helping understand which top producers might be at risk, or where you have potentials for within the base of relationships that you have for those agents to become top producers. And then there's so much more, like sales velocity, sales acceleration. And the intent of what we're doing, and we try and say this all the time, particularly if we're speaking to like a head of sales, for instance, is we're not trying to replace your traditional sales analytics or your relationship efforts or what you might already be doing. This is really deploying these new technologies to sort of augment everything you're already doing and just gain greater efficiencies. So we're very excited about that project. And Paul, that that collaboration that we have with you and your team, and look forward to seeing where it goes.
And Prem, talk to us about hiring. The opportunity is, okay, we're a smaller company, but we work with a number of vendors. The vendors have had lots and lots of turnover. We've had turnover too. I guess, what is the opportunity, and what can we learn, from the machines that machines may be doing better than we are?
Yeah, absolutely. Turnover is hitting companies to help them screen candidates, schedule them, and then have more efficient and equitable remote interviews. So we do a lot of time savings on the front end. Right now, there's about 14,000 companies in the U.S. right now that are spending about $6.5 billion on just kind of the repetitive processing of answering candidates' questions, hopping on a very repetitive phone screen, taking notes after a Zoom meeting. So can we save you time there, and then can we actually analyze what's happening in those remote interviews? Are you being fair? Are you being biased? Are you, simply the speed at which I'm speaking right now, over 150 words per minute, our tool would prompt me a candidate where English is a second language might be at a disadvantage. So how can we, save a bunch of time on the front end in processing large amounts of candidates, and then help our humans show up better in these remote interviews? And the end result there is you'll get a time savings because we're automating quite a bit of the process, but you'll also reduce your time to hire. So when you have a hard to fill role and high turnover, you want to have folks that you're processing very quickly and then converting them, not getting them to the end and then they go to a competitor or something like that. So the conversations we're having with candidates really do matter with conversions. So that's been a big focus of ours. And as you mentioned, the equity piece, we believe more diverse teams are better teams. So how do we make sure we're not, in many cases, accidentally being unfair to certain candidates?
So I'm going to rewind us real fast. There's been a lot of conversation, especially over the last, I'll say, month, 2 months now, about AI. Hurry up and slow down. People want to pause it. People don't want to pause it. We want to, have the bots out there. Paul and I were playing with this product, and it was shocking how realistic this face was and this voice was that was reading back the scripting that you were providing it. So I can see positives, I can see negatives, right? And there's a lot in each of those camps. But for someone who may be new to this topic or new to this conversation, can you please describe to us what is generative AI, and how does it, if it does, differ from different types of artificial intelligence?
Do you want me to take this, Neeraja, or do you want it? Yeah, I'm happy to start. Yeah, I'm happy to start. So, within AI, one of the more common types of AI is machine learning, and that's what we use. Building these things that use data to learn, maybe make decisions. With generative AI specifically, it's creating stuff. So whether it's creating images or text, so it's going kind of down a pattern where it might say, hey, here's the first 5 words. Can I predict what the next set would be? And that kind of creation, what we're finding, as many of us have seen playing with ChatGPT and GPT-3 and 4, there's a lot of parts of creating things that aren't exciting for humans to do, like writing a follow-up email after a meeting. So kind of getting that first step done so that you can either let that happen and put it out there, or maybe edit it a little bit. So that's what generative AI is doing. It's helping us kind of create content very quickly, and happy to later talk about some of the concerns and maybe some of the hesitations around some components of it, but that's my definition.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect description, Prem. And I think it's generative AI generates new content that didn't exist before. And it has the ability to analyze these really, really large data sets, including large language data sets, and learn from unlabeled and unstructured data. And when prompted, it generates that new content as a response, whether it's text or images or video. And And ChatGPT, and I know, we had to go there and talk about ChatGPT, has kind of taken the world by storm. And GPT, which is OpenAI's, product that sort of supports ChatGPT, had existed for a while, but I think ChatGPT sort of took the world by storm because they put it in the hands of the consumer, and it just sparked everybody's imagination because it understands context so very well. And they were the numbers are staggering. They hit 1 million users in less than 5 days and 10 million in less than 2 months. And you think about what that means, given how long it takes to get adoption and usage, even for large established platforms. So it's truly kind of unprecedented, what we're seeing. And I think that's why we're here talking about it. And so are a lot of other people.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned this is sort of the first time they put it in their hand, that somebody put these kind of tools in the hands of a consumer. Yeah, what did make it feel like this stuff just snuck up on us? Because on one hand, I'd say this was kind of a frog in the famous test tube, right? I don't want to get spam on my blog. I have a reCAPTCHA thing to click on. Oh, that's cute. It's a fire truck. Click, click, click. Then comes along, I bought a book from Amazon and it actually did a good recommendation for my next book. Oh, wow, Netflix really has some good entertainment on me to this. And I don't think the math has been here for a while. What is it that just, set this particular, this particular company on fire?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, I think it was kind of a step change that the average consumer could feel, touch, and see, kind of like with the iPhone. So touch screens and some of the other functionality on iPhones were around for a really long time, but it came out in a way that was very usable. There's been a lot of examples of chatbots that have done bad things or, trained on the world's internet. And Microsoft had Tay, which was one when I was there, and it said stuff that was racist. And this is all public information. But the step change happened in a way that was just much better than anything out there. I think it was a big thing. And then it was usable by the average consumer in a way that allowed them to share, touch, feel. So there was some, network effects as well, because it was stuff that you could share your experience. So yeah, a lot of those factors combining, I think, is what I saw there. But
I'm curious. So I've read a lot. I've clicked around. I'm an avid user at this point. It helps me in so many ways. And I take it all with a grain of salt, right? Because what you receive may or may not be factual. It may or may not be correct. You have to kind of put your own spin on these things, do some editing. But can Neeraja, I'll kick this one for you to start. Can you talk to us a little bit about, the research end, the engineering end? There are individuals who have to set up the numbers, the systems, the math. There's training for these AI systems. But what are some of these challenges that they're up against? We talked about how, this tool is trained on the internet. And there's obviously a lot of great things on the internet, and there's a lot of hot garbage on the internet. So what are some of the challenges that they're facing in terms of training these tools and then putting in the hands of the average bear like me, who's, click-clacking away and using this to generate content?
No, that's a great question, Laura. And I'm going to respond more in terms of like some of the risks, some of the risks associated with using generative AI. In terms of the engineering side of it, it's actually made the process a lot easier. These large language models, it would have taken years and lots of people. And now you can just do it faster. You can use their models and just do some tweaks or recalibrate, and you have this entire process ready to go. So I think the engineering side of it has been enabled in this amazing way through these models. What has become, I think, more challenging is a couple different things from a risk standpoint. And I know how much, the insurance industry likes to consider the risk factors. The first one is it's wrong. The answers can be wrong a lot. And a lot of people have noted that. ChatGPT, particularly seems to have trouble with algebra and abstract reasoning for some reason, but can write great poetry. So it's really interesting. So in a very regulated industry like insurance, of course, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want your call center reps, using generative AI to say something, that's not correct to your policyholder, for instance. Now, there's companies that are already putting policies in place saying don't use ChatGPT, telling their employees don't do it right now because we don't know what we're opening ourselves to. And that's a slightly different issue, which is more about intellectual property. So that's the second concern that I've been, hearing a lot, which is if you use the open source models, all your training data belongs to the AI company. So now they won't directly share it with a competitor. I think it's unlikely they do that. However, they will use that information to make their models better, which could indirectly benefit a competitor. So that's a concern. However, if you use the paid products, the paid large language models, then it's a regular licensing agreement and, you own the IP. So there's all kinds of concerns out there. The one about ChatGPT being wrong or generative AI being wrong, Paul, as you know, we're working with Nassau on a proposal to sort of introduce some kind of generative AI into the call center environment. And I think the way we're going to try and mitigate that risk is pick some very focused use cases and combine it with HRF or human reinforcement feedback, which basically just means you have a human person look at it and look at the responses and make sure, that they're what is expected and that they are accurate. So, those are the big two areas where I'm hearing concerns is accuracy and intellectual property.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the opportunity and change, right? I think my wife says, let's talk about the cons of this thing. I said, you know what? They're not cons. We're not going to vote these things off the blood of their ear. This math has been here forever, but how should companies change and embrace it? And Prem, I don't believe you've done work in our insurance industry yet, but we're not that different from other sectors. If I'm in the HR department, what does this mean for my job and my career? If you're sorting through stuff, by the way, sounds like you can do a better job managing diversity than I can. Okay, is it cheaper and faster HR departments? Is it better HR departments? Are there new roles that are coming into the HR departments that wouldn't have existed but for the fact we're deploying these technologies?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think CHROs, Chief Human Resource Officers, are, looking at their staff holistically, and that staff is combined with people and with automation and AI. So I kind of encourage our customers to write a job description for their AI. So what education do you want it to have? What are the skills you're looking for? Who will it report to? How will you assess its performance? So write a job description similarly to are you hiring a person? But yeah, as Neeraja mentions, there's definitely, I will touch a little bit, certainly the risk piece, and there's a lot of questions HR departments can ask vendors. One example is if I were to tell my 8-year-old son to hammer in a nail, he would do it, but he gets his training in hammering from Minecraft, so he doesn't quite know that, it probably hurts if you miss. He hasn't learned that part of hammering from the source he's using to. So I think when you are looking to kind of augment your staff, I do think it will be cheaper, faster. I think there's quality elements, there's ways to reduce bias. But if I were looking to buy a piece of software that's using generative AI, I would ask a lot of questions around where the data is coming from, how the training is done. Is there a human in the loop? Like Neeraja mentioned, that human intervention from a QA standpoint can be good. Or what ethical AI guidelines are you following? Are you following like a framework like Microsoft has? And how are you auditing it? So, but to answer your question, I think the end result, I do feel there's a a segment of very manual elements of HR jobs and recruiting jobs, recruiting coordination. And when I interview recruiting coordinators, they want to be recruiters. They want to be having real conversations with candidates and getting them to work at the company. They don't want to be taking 10 sets of notes at the end of the day when their meeting is done and putting it into an applicant tracking system. So I think the bottom set of manual jobs will be removed, but AI isn't going to replace humans. Maybe humans using AI will replace those who are not. But the next level is now going to be elevated and have the data to make decisions. The one part I'm a little, there's laws coming out in New York, which are great. I'm a little skeptical on some, not all, but some uses when AI is making the final decision in an abstract way and then like rejecting a candidate or something. Right now we're at the phase where it can help us make better decisions, but if it's helping us make better decisions, we better know what it's using to make the recommendations to us in the first place. So those are some of the things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's true, right? If we're going to trust it, we need to understand it. We need it. What are its morals? What are its values? Can we trust? If that's a thing, it might be. And as we dive into AI and it continues to grow, who knows? It might just let us know all about itself. But I'm thinking about a little bit diving, I'll say to the left lane. So we talked a little about insurance, but I want to dive deeper into, human and AI collaboration and explore a little bit. I'd like both of your opinions on this. What do you think collaboration is going to look like in the fields of art, music, literature, where it's already making an impact, but humans are going to help push it even farther? What are some things that you think we can see 5 months or 5 years from now that we haven't ever explored before because of this?
That's a great question, Laura, because one of the things that I think generative AI is being acknowledged as having huge potential for is the content creation space. So it's the original content it generates that's more based on images and videos. And there's a lot of players out there. We talk about ChatGPT a lot, but there's also, DALL-E and Stability AI and all these companies that are doing amazing things more in the video and generating the video and the image type content. And if you think about how much it costs to create content, how much it costs to create original content. And you think about simplifying that process into, a prompt, a question. So I saw this incredible thing on Meta's website some time ago, and it's still in research phase, but it's, you type in something like, create a picture of robot cats flying through a galaxy, wearing pink hats. And it does it. It's just like you may, and then you think about how much time that would actually take, in the non-AI world to do something like that. So I think that's going to be a fundamental sea change. And it's sort of, dovetails with this whole NFT revolution, where you have content creators in the metaverse and you have these fungible tokens and they're all digital and virtual. So I would say that outside of the insurance space, I think that's a very high growth space where we're going to see a lot of interesting things happening.
Yeah. Well, I think, coming, kind of back to our world, this will utterly revolutionize marketing, ad agencies. I mean, the whole ecosystem will have to adopt. I've got a brother-in-law who's got an interesting firm out in the West. And we've had some really interesting discussions about compensation models. A lot of these businesses are built on hourly billing rates. Well, here's if I can pop out 30 blog posts in 2 minutes. Where's my value? However, you think back to what you're describing, creative director in the past would have to have 15 artists working for themselves, in a classical situation. Wait a second. I'm just going to write a prompt. I'm using Stability AI. It's great. Oh, how many pictures versions would you like? I'd like 5. Oh, and fork this one and play up this. okay, I just employed 30 graphic designers, for a moment. So suddenly creativity feels like could be much more asking the question, giving the words, giving the prompts. The questions are much more valuable than being able to actually do the work, because you've got, as you say, Prem, writing letters, writing thank you notes. We kind of know what they're going to look like. It's not a surprise. It's just a lot of work to get there. How will, where will the value of employees or workers or leaders be in this space? Just continuing on Laura's track. I mean, what will the management leadership skills look like in this world? Neeraja, what do you think?
I think it will be a process of iteration and evolution, because the technology is going to change, and it's already changing at warp space. So how we used machine learning 2 years ago looks very different now in the world of generative AI that we live in. So all our use cases are changing. And I think successful management, if that was the question, Paul, will understand the value of experimentation and iteration and pulling in these new technologies and understanding how it can drive efficiencies in their organization and finding ways to mitigate that risk so that you can get the learning and move forward.
Yeah, let me make the question really clear, Prem. It's how do I stay employed for another 10 years or 15 years, right? What do I have to do? How do I adapt? I think this is something a lot of people are asking themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in some ways it makes everyone a manager. You're managing prompts, you're building things that is being outsourced in a way to something or someone else. There's a lot of studies out there around the amount of jobs that will be created through this. So I think there are certainly types of things that are no longer going to exist. But I generally feel it lets us focus on what's important. So in that example of a follow-up email to a candidate, there can be maybe a generic one written, but if I'm able to know, tools like us can come in and say, hey, this is a Colorado candidate, so you have to talk about pay transparency in this way. We know that remote work is really important to this role, so let's inject that. So I think companies like us can build data sets to take maybe a little more generic outputs and make them useful. But I think everyone will have jobs. What the job is might be a little different. When I kind of think about just focusing on what's important, if someone was to come to me and say, hey, how do you train the world's best recruiter ever? I would not start by telling them to meet them when they're 7, teach them how to speak different languages, teach them how to walk, teach them how to search the internet. I'd say wait until they're out, let their parents do that, their parents being OpenAI, and then when they, or a competitor, and then I'll teach them how to be a good recruiter. So I do think it allows these verticalized solutions to bring what they're good at and not have to worry about the kind of infrastructure around creating something that's good at talking, but more so good at recruiting or doing a use case inside of insurtech, for example.
All right, so let's pretend that I'm, on the fence. I'm not sure if this is going to be good for me or my business to use. What advice would you have for a me, right? So I understand that there's value. I can see that there's good. I can see that there's risks, and I'm not sure if I should be diving into this. What advice do you have for businesses today, or business leaders?
So I have some advice specifically for insurance industry business leaders.
I want to learn.
And it relates to forms and documentation. So this is not a space that we're specialized in, but how much time do insurance companies spend on finding forms, explaining forms to internal stakeholders, explaining it to the customer, setting up all the training to support that entire process? It is a very, very forms documentation oriented industry that spends a lot of time on this. So this isn't a use case we cover necessarily, but there's a lot of great solutions in this field. But if you think about all that time being spent, all those resources, and then you visualize using one of these large language models and tokenizing every single word on every single form that you use to get the exact subset of words that you need for every interaction, internal and external, then that becomes a compelling value proposition. It's not something that's like out there, that's more creative, that's in the ether or the future. It's like a here and now. Here's how it can drive these massive efficiencies for you.
Yeah, I think, Neeraja, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, you're drilling into some real specific ones on the customer service side. I mean, how many questions can people ask about their accounts, right? How many questions can they ask about their products? It's not a finite set of answers. And by the way, even if it's not precise, I'm sure you could do a model that would run through, if you knew every single question a customer was going to ask, what would stop you from running those prompts for every single account once a month, right? Yep. So the answer's there when the person comes. I think we kind of have to think differently about some of the problems we have, but some of it doesn't live inside the insurance companies, right? Like the whole legal structure of our policies, our certain forms that have to get in front of regulators is dictated by, you must provide a form. No, actually, it's a PDF that looked like a piece of paper, and that is what we're going to use as the artifact of record, which makes no sense, but it is. We've got a lot of opportunities. What happens when you get access to the call records or the call recordings in our center? I think you'll find some interesting studies. Prem, you'd have a field day, I'm sure. Lengths of calls by people, a field day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I'll just add to that, and I definitely geek out over call recordings and data. I think in terms of our buyers, obviously I'm in the recruiting and HR tech space, but sometimes there is a bit of a stigma, and really it's not so much about if I were to tell a head of an HR department or head of a recruiting department, do you want the best possible experience for your job candidates? They'd obviously say, yes, we do. What's happening in this high volume space is it's not so much would you prefer like a generative AI chatbot versus a human, but right now there's just not enough humans. There about 80% of candidates are ignored. So it's really a question, would you rather something with technology is answering your candidates' questions in 24 hours, or just ignoring them, or the good ones waiting a week to hop on a phone screen? So I think there isn't so much of a binary humans. So I think getting past that step and then thinking about the things that aren't happening, not just the things you want to do better, but what are things that aren't happening? Like I'm not okay with the fact that so many candidates are being ignored or getting like their resume looked at for 7 seconds, right? So how do we change how do we make the things that aren't happening happen? And I think that's one way to get ourselves kind of around where we can use AI to get better.
Now it's time for my favorite question. I love this question. Paul knows this question. So you both could be doing anything in the world, anything that you put your mind to, writing poetry, for example, which I will be closing our episode with because I had ChatGPT write us a poem. So we'll save that for the end. But I will start with my question. I'm going to ask you, what is your why? Why do you do this? Why do you do the work that you do? Why do you dive in such a way? You could be, I don't know, on the moon right now, but you're doing the work that you do. Please enlighten us, Neeraja.
Okay. So I'll talk about Bill Gates. And and it's related to my why. So Bill Gates wrote this blog post a couple of weeks ago, and it's titled, "The Age of AI Has Begun." And in this blog post, he talks about how, he acknowledges that generative AI is the future. It's as significant as the microprocessor, the personal computer, the internet, mobile phones, and is going to change everything. And he says traditional AI, which he calls generative AI, which we think is the new thing, solves a very specific problem. and or provides a very specific service. But there's something else called artificial general intelligence, or AGI, that doesn't exist yet. And then he goes on to say, there's a debate in the computing industry whether AGI can even be built, if it's even possible. And then he says he believes it's possible, but he doesn't know if it's going to happen in 10 years or 100 years. And so the point really is this is like an unprecedented time that we're living in. So if anybody was part of the PC revolution, in the 90s, that is a real, sort of life that was really lived, sort of riding the crest of that revolution. And I think that's my why, that of everything I could be doing, this is one of the most interesting and important places to be, because there is so much that is yet to come.
No, that's great. And so I'm actually going to start with Bill Gates as well when I talk about my why. So I spent about the first 10 years of my career at Microsoft, and had a chance to be there when Gates was CEO, and Ballmer and Satya, and all three of them. And I learned a lot about technology and the scale at which it could create impact. But after having my first kid, it was kind of that's when my real why started. I loved my job at Microsoft, but it was a job, right? And when I had my first kid, I was, sitting around on paternity leave, eating a bunch of frozen yogurt, and I was just kind of thinking about where I want to take my life and the impact I want to make. And then I saw this kind of revolution happening on the AI side, and I experienced a lot of problems like these myself. When I was interviewing for jobs, my colleague was getting interviewed in a completely different manner than I was, and she had my same degree, she had exactly the same credentials. They were hitting her hard on technical questions randomly, and not me. And so I saw there was some unfairness happening. I had the motivation around wanting to create an impact for my kids, and then I saw kind of the AI revolution, like Neeraja was mentioning, kind of beginning, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that's kind of my 3-part why.
Excellent. Well, listen, hey, thanks so much for joining us. Prem, it was great to meet you. Neeraja, look forward to more good work in the coming year here. So, Laura, any final thoughts?
Yes, let us end with a poem. Amidst life's unpredictable waves, insurance provides a shield that saves, a safety net for peace of mind. It paves. And with that, we'll wrap our episode.
Okay.
ChatGPT.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Hey, thanks so much. And, for listeners, join us again, next week for another interesting episode of the Reimagine podcast. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Perfect. So it'll upload. I think let me see, you're almost 100% uploaded. If you hit the leave button, it looks like a red phone below, like a Commissioner Gordon phone.
Yep.
Keep your browser window open, and it'll tell you when you're 100%. And at 100%, you can close your window. So you can leave the studio, it'll upload real fast, and then you can close your window after that.
Okay, awesome. So I'll press the red button to keep the browser open. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And I might have to bring you to one of our all hands to do a poetry reading. That was quite fantastic.
As soon as she was like, yeah, it's great at poetry, I was like, ChatGPT, like, write me a 3-line poem about the insurance industry. And that's what it came up with. So and we're going to close the episode with that.
Well delivered.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it was really good to meet you both. And I'm excited to be in touch. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information about this company and other great startups at imagine.nfg.com.